But yeah, in here we're going to be focusing on, I guess, for lack of better words, the values of worship and how that outworks itself for us as worship leaders, musicians, anyone here that's part of their technical team at their church. Amazing. Maybe some of you do both, I imagine, as well. I always think musicians make the best sound engineers, actually. Because, you're kind of used to picking things out in the music. So that's great to have you guys, whatever your role is in the church. Actually, that word role is something I want to focus on, kind of the grid through which we will look at these, values and outworkings, if you like. So in every team, and every great team, there are different roles, different responsibilities. Each person has a different part to play, and that's what makes a team function. And in some ways, leading worship is a little bit like that. There are a few groups of people or parties involved. The first is God, obviously. And next is us as worship leaders and musicians involved in leading the worship. And then thirdly is the congregation. And I'd love to look at the dynamic that happens there as we lead worship. I think sometimes it's helpful to define those roles so that we don't end up treading on toes, if you like, and so that we end up staying in our lane, not just because it's like a straitjacket, but because we're staying true to the part that God has called us to play in all of this. So firstly, I'd love to look at God's role in worship. And this might sound like the most obvious thing, but I feel like subtly this can be got wrong, and this is where the whole house of cards falls down. So we'll start at the most important. God's role in worship is to receive glory. One of his roles. So the first one is it's his job to be center stage. It's his job, it's all for him in the first place, isn't it? And the second one is it's his role to inhabit the praises of his people, for him to meet with us. And the third one is to change hearts. So I just want to look at those three roles that God plays in worship. So firstly, to receive glory. Again, it's obvious. It should be obvious, shouldn't it? We sing the songs to him, for him, and about him. That'll be a phrase that you're used to hearing, I'm sure, if you've been around Soul Survivor for a while. But so subtly, the culture of celebrity that we have in our world that is so prevalent, where people can literally make themselves famous overnight by posting a funny video on TikTok. That's the world in which we live, and where self-promotion is actually seen like, oh, well done, you've managed to get this many followers. It's actually seen as a thing to be proud of. And this was where obviously worship just turns that completely on its head. And so that's one of the reasons why we have the cross always. Whether it's at church or when we did the festivals, the cross is always center stage as a reminder that whoever's on the stage, whatever's going on, that Jesus is front and center. So that's all really intentional, and another great reminder for us as worship leaders. A way that we can help make Jesus center stage and not just remind ourselves, but also remind the congregation is by not talking too much. Obviously people need leading and for us to provide a strong lead, but it does tip over into a point. It's a bit like singing lots of riffs everywhere. It tips over into a point where it actually becomes a distraction and it highlights us as the worship leader, or, a massive guitar riff on every song. Or actually, if we're asking that question of what are people focusing on right now, are we helping them to focus on the one who this is all for? Or actually, are we kind of being thrown left and right, looking at what this musician is doing, or are we kind of killing it with words a little bit and just talking too much rather than actually just getting on and worshipping? one example just came to mind of this. A few years ago, we did one of my favourite old songs, King of Kings, Majesty, and we had this lovely orchestra. It was I think it was at Naturally Supernatural a few years ago, and this beautiful orchestra, and they played Pachelbel's Canon kind of over the top of it. And it just sounded so amazing. Even as we were rehearsing, I was like, wow, this is just wonderful. And even with that, we have to be so disciplined, don't we? To make sure that is drawing our eyes up onto him. And so I remember even as the strings started playing, we just waited for a while. And then when people started to sing out, I just remember singing, it's you we worship, Jesus. It's you we worship. Partly as a reminder to myself, but also for everyone else, where it can be, oh, wow, that sounds so beautiful. Look how amazing that string player is, that violinist. Again, it was just a reminder. It's not about that, but these things can be used to draw our eyes upwards and to inspire us, of who God is. And I find even the whole worship and celebrity thing, I mean, even those two shouldn't really belong in the same sentence, do they? John the Baptist really is our model for this. He's the one that paved the way for Jesus, but never wanted to make a name for himself. He was the one that was always pointing, there's going to be a guy coming after me. I'm not even worthy to untie his shoes. He must increase, I must decrease. And so even in our language, I find I've just had a check in myself, actually, of just sometimes when we've walked, after leading worship, we've walked off stage with the musicians and stuff, and it's so easy to say, oh, you smashed that bit, oh, you smashed that, oh, that was amazing, in a way to encourage people. But I just tried to choose my words a little bit with that, even, just to not want to feed into the culture of you were the star of this. So without wanting to over spiritualize it, it's just to check, that's all, because sometimes the things that even we end up saying do end up filtering through into our culture, I suppose. Now, many of us won't walk around, I'm sure, feeling like celebrities on a Sunday. We're the first to turn up, aren't we, in the morning? Often the last to leave. And there are many elements that are not glamorous at all. Technical problems going wrong and running around photocopying things, or I don't know if people do that anymore, but probably not. Charging up iPads, I don't know. So maybe we don't feel like, that's, oh yes, I'm really struggling with the celebrity culture. But it's just good to remind ourselves of who is king. God inhabits the praises of his people. It's his role to come. And that's where the phrase, we don't hype him up, he comes down, kind of comes from. It's not, and it's sometimes easy to think, oh, that's our job to really stir things up. If we play loud enough, then God might come in an amazing way. It's his job to come down by his Spirit. We don't have to twist his arm. He's desperate to meet with his people. And so the bit where our job description ends is providing a safe space and a space that is welcome and open to his Spirit, even by singing those words that we sang this morning. To you, our hearts are open. That's what we can do. The rest has to be God. So we must leave his Spirit to him. We can't hype him up. He comes down. And then to worship is to change. It's his job to change hearts of the people that we're leading. It's his job to minister to them. We lead worship, faithfully, but it's his job to, when you have any encounter with anybody, even here, it changes us somehow, doesn't it? It either forms us and shapes us in a positive way or negative way, or but with God, when we come face to face with him, it's no different. But he's the Holy One. We change. Our hearts are changed. Our perspective is changed. And so it's a good reminder that that's not our job to do that. And hopefully, in a really releasing way. I don't know how you guys feel week to week. Maybe you feel really encouraged at the moment and you're seeing God at work. You're seeing God change hearts and change lives in and through worship. Maybe you do feel discouraged. Maybe it feels like you're getting up, faithfully leading, and it doesn't seem like people are going anywhere. And so I say this as a releasing thing. He is at work, regardless of what's on display on a Sunday. And so almost as we present our offering, which is we're leading people into his presence, we're doing our part, and we must leave our offering on the altar, not go back and tamper with it or try to shake something up and change it slightly, but trust the rest to God, trust that it's acceptable to him, and trust that he's at work. So our role, and hopefully this is where we can get a little bit practical, I want to make sure that I'm speaking not just to worship leaders, but to musicians and also anybody on a technical team. Because this really, I can't stress enough how important it is to get the values, whatever part you play in your worship team. So I'll just say a couple of our roles first, and then we can go into a bit more detail. But firstly, our role as worship leaders and musicians is to prepare well. The next one is to both lead and follow. And then another one is to make worship accessible to everybody. And then finally, to bring something fresh. So to prepare well. I've actually written, it's our job to prepare well, but not too well. Does that make sense? And what I mean by that is, it's obviously our job to know the songs inside out, to know the chords, to know the lyrics as best we can, particularly if we don't have a prompter or the iPad runs out of battery. You know the issues. But particularly with that, that's our job to plan and prepare and to know what we're doing. Plan a set list, have a bit of a structure. And where I say to not plan too well is to be open to the Holy Spirit. And that's not just the job of the worship leader. That is the job of everybody, for all of us to be watching, waiting, seeing what he's doing, and maybe most importantly, be willing and able to change direction. I remember going to lead somewhere before, and when I said, this is the rough set list, but we might do this and we might do that, and I could just see the horror and panic in their faces as they were planning on, where do I put that on the PowerPoint kind of thing. And this is where there are things we can do to help that, aren't there? So if that is something that is really, I believe, really important, to be open to the Holy Spirit and what he's doing in the room, which we can't always tell when we're sitting down to plan, can we? There has to be an element of flexibility. Then let's make sure the structures and the things around us work within that. Yeah, so I don't know if it is a PowerPoint. Maybe there's a different program we can use that makes us able to change between songs a little bit easier, or even as a musician, we learn the chords, but that's as a basis, isn't it? So that we can be creative on top of that, and so that we can take things in a slightly different direction, or repeat this section, or do something a bit different. So yeah, it's so important for us all to be on board with that in the preparation process. And then I guess specifically for worship leaders, but it's good for everybody to hear it too, particularly when I think of preparation. It's made me think of the last, particularly the last few weeks since the Queen died. I just remember Tom led, I think, the Sunday afterwards. And, I'm sure he would have planned it early doors on a Tuesday or something like that, got his set list up. He is actually quite good at doing that. I'm the really one that's the worst at that. Got it all up online, and then obviously here's the news that the Queen has died. And things like that, a little bit like with COVID, something that affects us corporately, even nationally, even globally, something like the Queen dying, it's on our minds, isn't it? As people walk into church, in some ways, weirdly, it unites us. And so we sang loads of songs about royalty and how Jesus is the King of Kings. And just like as we were singing, everyone came to church anywhere with their minds on the fact that the Queen had passed away. But as we were singing, it was like a reminder of who is the King that's on the eternal throne. And it just united everybody in the room, and that to me was like, that's intelligent worship leading, where it's like, that's well prepared. It's actually, we've used something that is corporate to not just draw us all together, but to draw us into his presence as well, and to focus our eyes from what was going on that week onto him. Again, COVID, I'm sure, well, I know, you guys that would have been through a period where we couldn't sing. Maybe you were meeting corporately, and for a while people just had to stand and just engage their hearts in worship. And it kind of works both ways. When we couldn't do that, we had a chat and we were like, well, we probably shouldn't sing songs that are all like, lift up his name with the sound of singing and, things like that. That was just like, it's just painful. It's like dangling candy in front of a baby. So just using our brains a little bit, but also equally, once we could sing, all the songs were about that. It was about lifting our voices. It was about join together. All those ones that are about like opening our lungs, basically. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. And that was another thing that really kind of brought us all together and was relevant to where people were at. The second of our roles is to lead and to follow. And I kind of view this whole thing anyway a little bit like, not a relay necessarily, but like a train carriage, I don't know what. But God is here and he is leading us. We are in the middle and the congregation are here, and not in terms of rank, obviously. God is here. He's leading us by his Spirit into his presence. We are kind of the mediators in some ways between God and the congregation in that setting. We're following the Holy Spirit because he's leading us, but we're also leading the congregation. Does that make sense? It's kind of in this kind of direction. So the congregation are being led by us, but we're doing both. We're not just leading them, we have our eyes on Jesus and what he's doing. You might have heard Mike talk about, or maybe even at previous conferences and things, about the role of a worship leader being a pastor and a prophet. And that's kind of a bit of a visual in some ways. Pastorally, we want to lead the congregation, see where they're at, see what's happening in our church at the moment, and just acknowledge the fact that everyone arrives at church in a different place, don't they? Not many are like pumped and ready to worship. It takes acknowledging where they're at and a pastoral heart, really. But then also, if that's all we did, we would lead worship very comfortably, and everyone would be all happy and, doing all the things that, singing all the songs that they really like, their favourites, and doing it in a way that's all very comfortable and not out of our comfort zone, nothing too risky. We'd have a lovely time, but we wouldn't actually go anywhere. The other side of it, which is crucial to that balance, is the prophetic. And that is keeping one eye on the people, yes, because we want to bring them with us, but one eye on what the Lord is doing. And so practically, that's like always thinking ahead, thinking like 2 moves ahead, a bit like snooker. Okay, well, we're in this moment right now. Where's God taking us in a minute? What should we sing next? Even asking God to speak to you through the looks on people's faces sometimes. Or I was talking to Andy the other day about like sometimes I imagine somebody, particularly in a church where you know everybody, I imagine where are they at right now? A friend of mine, had a stillborn baby a couple of years ago, and I remember she wasn't even in the congregation, but I remember in my mind's eye just picturing her and almost leading worship for her in some ways, and kind of imagining where she was at and how are we going to lead her into the presence of God when she's just experienced such trauma. And so it's the both and. It's pastorally leading people and prophetically following Jesus and taking his lead. And if that isn't a great reminder that we're not ultimately in charge, I don't know what is. To make worship accessible to everybody, that's one of the roles that we can do. And one that is our responsibility. I could talk about this for ages because I think it's so important. If we are to be pastoral and to actually bring people with us rather than just having a great time, going off on one and following the Spirit and just having a lovely, lovely time going off into the seventh heaven and then realizing, oh, everyone's sat down and they're on their phones because we haven't actually taken them with us, then that's where we need to make worship accessible so that people can actually hop on board the worship train, if you like. So a couple of little thoughts. If you're leading a small group, not the best setting to introduce a new song. Definitely not to start with a new song. That's happened before, and it was a bit of a train wreck. It's particularly if you haven't got any words, often it's just from memory, isn't it? We want to sing familiar songs. Tags work really well. And remember that people will need a bit of a prompter as well. I kind of want a seat, actually, but I think no one will be able to see me. I'm just going to grab my guitar, one sec. Even I haven't actually tested this out. I have tuned it, but does this work? No. Hang on. That's going to make this interesting. No. There we go. Thanks, Jareth. Sorry, my volume was actually down. That's probably why. Turn your volume up first. Yes, if you're in a small group, just be thinking of those things, those barriers, I guess, that would make it difficult for people to engage. And one of those would be there's no words. So there are certain things that work really well. But even, what was I doing the other day? King of Kings, just giving a bit of a prompt without it being like too distracting. Praise forever to the King of Kings. And then say, to reveal the kingdom coming. They're literally just like 2 words, just to give people a heads up. Another thing, even just like really simply, is when you're repeating a chorus, I'll just do like, blessed be your name. So everyone knows that. You can even use your voice actually to kind of indicate where you're going, so that you're not having to say, blessed be your name, or let's repeat that chorus again. Just again, not because that sounds silly or it's not cool, none of that. It's purely because we don't want to distract people. So any way that we can minimize distractions and flow as much as possible, that is the reason. That's, I think, really what I want to get at this Theory and Practical. It's not because that's the way we do things and it's cool, or that's the way we do things because we've never seen it done any other way. It's trying to serve people the best we can. So, is that still working? Yeah? Blessed be the name of the Lord. You can sing along, I'm like, blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Oh, blessed be the name. Do you see what I mean? And so kind of, you can give little hints, and people do. They do pick up on that. You don't have to be musical to pick up on that. You can kind of tell with the direction of your voice where you're going. Even, for example, with that one, even if you're going into a bridge, blessed be your glorious name. You give and take away. Whereas if I went, blessed be your glorious name. You give and take. Just a bit, woo. jarring, that's all. So if I want to make it really obvious to everybody, don't repeat the chorus, we're doing something different, I will literally just sustain that note, almost to give people cues, like, no, don't sing over this, we're going somewhere slightly different. Glorious name, you give and take away. Little things like that. Small groups, no words. Kids worship. I'm not an expert on kids worship, so I won't try and pretend to be. But again, that's a scenario where maybe songs or hymns with thou and thy and things, it's about keeping it simple, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest, there are things that even adults don't understand. Singing about grace and salvation, even that's too amazing for us to fully understand. So I'm not saying don't sing about things that we see as beyond children, but let's make it easy for them as well. And probably long instrumentals, unless there's like little actions and things, we're going to lose their attention. Like I said, I'm not the expert on that, but it's about considering every context, and really the question we're asking here is, who is it that we're leading? And how can we help them, as the worship leaders, how can we help them engage with Jesus and, sense his presence in it all? Early morning prayer meetings. I remember when I was a worship intern many moons ago, getting gently told that it probably wasn't the best idea to start with very slow, sludgy, intimate songs right up the start when it was a 7 a.m. prayer meeting. Again, that's just like a practical thing of just really, I guess I just hadn't got my mind into who is coming and how are they feeling right now. Oh yes, they're feeling very tired because it's 7 o'clock in the morning. So let's use something that kind of wakes people up a little bit. Again, that pastoral setting. Gathering different churches. I don't know, do many of you guys have like local church events that you would be part of? Anybody do that? Yeah, just a few. Okay, I won't spend ages on this, but again, if you're going to visit somewhere else, obviously it looks different to your own context, doesn't it? So the song that your worship pastor recently wrote probably isn't the best one to do, albeit a fantastic song. But, out of context, that's not going to help people. Sometimes I have literally just gone through, when we've done, we had a church leaders retreat just this week, and it just caused me, I had to think a bit harder of like, okay, we're leading worship for a bunch of people around the country who are all leading churches that are quite similar to ours, but at the same time, I don't know what they're singing each week, and I don't want them to be just sat there. It's a retreat. They've come here to meet with Jesus. I want to make that as easy as possible. And so I did just literally log on to the CCLI website just to see what the top songs are, because that does give you a rough idea, doesn't it, of what the country is singing at the moment. I'm just trying to get us into the mind of making good decisions when it comes to our bit of preparation. And then finally, to bring something fresh each week. Again, like I said, this isn't to be cool and current and this, that, and the other. It's to be accessible. It's if we end up singing, I love Blessed Be Your Name. If we end up singing Blessed Be Your Name every single week, it does become stale. Whatever the song, however fresh the song was when we first introduced it, it does become not just stale, but we can end up singing it on autopilot. You know those songs, perhaps even as you're leading them, it's like, gosh, I know this song so well, I've forgotten what the words are actually saying. And that's often a good indicator of when it's time to just lay a song to rest. Not forever, but did that sound a bit morbid? Yes, sorry. Kill the song. No, to just give it a rest. And we've done that so many times. Waymaker was one of the most recent ones. I was like, okay, I think we've done that now. But again, it started off so fresh. But there can be a habit, can't there, of just slamming a song until it does slightly lose meaning. And that's where it's time to time to move on and time to find other songs and maybe even, so I've put new songs here, but also maybe even revamping an older song, pulling one out of the woodwork that we haven't done for a while. It's amazing how much life that breathes into our congregations, into our churches. Something that that perhaps we rested ages ago. I remember doing, you are the everlasting God, the everlasting God. That one. You do not faint, you won't grow weary. So that one we hadn't done for years and years, but it was one that the church instantly knew. And so that became fresh again, weirdly. I feel like this could quickly turn into a sing-along, couldn't it? Just while we're talking about the values of worship. So an old song revamped, or a new song could be maybe having a different instrument, or setting up your band slightly differently. So sometimes we've done that. We particularly did that during COVID and coming out of COVID, partly because, it felt like there'd been a lot of transition within the church anyway. And so we just had no drums at all, I think, to start with. It was just literally a worship leader, lots of backing vocalists, because finally we could sing again. So we really, all through COVID, we really felt like, I don't know if you ever logged onto the church live streams, that was the thing that was front and center in the mix, because people, anyone can flick on a CD and just listen to a worship song. That's great. But to be able to have the voices so high in the mix, you feel like it makes you want to join in. Whereas we all know, don't we? It was so easy to sit there, press play, and just watch, and be a spectator, which is exactly what we don't want in worship. We want people to engage, not just their voices, but their hearts. And so we had lots of vocals at that point, and we took a long time to introduce a full band, because we had found something really precious, just engaging with Jesus in a simple way, all stripped back, and without being allowed to sing. So we just reintroduced all that really, really slowly. But again, you might have someone in your congregation that plays, I don't know, the saxophone or something that's a bit different that you don't use every single week. Maybe you do use the saxophone every week, I don't know, but whatever is different to you, and it's like, oh, I know. That, I don't know if he's here somewhere, Jeremy Webb, who's been with us for years. He plays keys, and he also plays the accordion, and so occasionally we would get him to play his accordion. It sounded so beautiful and just brought something fresh to the same songs. That was, again, a different way of bringing fresh bread each week, if you like. Again, like once we just come out of COVID, one week, we just decided to give all the musicians a microphone, and so we all sang. I think there was like 6 of us, all kind of BVing, and that felt really fresh. It made all the songs sound different, and also it just, I really do. Anyone a vocalist here that sings backing vocals or other? Yeah, lovely. I just think there's something really, really. You're in a kind of a unique position when you're a vocalist. You haven't got an instrument that you're hiding behind, or not that musicians are hiding behind their instruments, but you've got nothing to hide behind. Put it that way. You are exposed, and in that way, you identify directly with every member of the congregation. You're focusing solely on worship. You're not having to work out what your fingers are doing or hands or whatever. I'm like, I can't remember which way you play drums, but you identify with them directly, and so. That's where the scope is so wide to model worship to our congregations, because you are in that unique position. So one week we did loads of BVs. One week we thought, let's do something in a slightly different style, and granted it was an older song, so we were kind of revamping a new song anyway. Lord, I lift your name on high. Is that going way too far back? No. Okay. Actually, I'm going to play this to you. I think I was listening to this on the radio. Hang on. All right, tell me if you recognise this song. This gave me the inspiration for... I just found myself singing Lord, I Lift Your Name on High. Wait a second. Here we go. 2, 3, 4. Lord, I lift your name on high. There we go. So we just had a bit of fun, 1 week. I don't think I did it quite that high, but it was a love to sing, pray from heaven to earth to show the way from the earth to the cross, my debt to pay, from the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on Lord, I lift your name on high. Just gave it a totally different feel. And it was just so fun. It just really brought joy. I think we miss out if, when we're looking for fresh stuff, all we're doing, the only portion we're looking at is new songs that have appeared on the charts. I just think there's such a wealth of stuff that's already been written that is just begging and crying out to be reinvented a little bit. So give it a try. Not to mention hymns. I mean, we haven't even gone there, but there's so many amazing hymns that we can even use in our songwriting. You want to really revamp something, take the lyrics and give it a new tune and see how, maybe give it a little refrain or a chorus. Would really recommend that if you are passionate about writing for your church community, but perhaps feel daunted by the task of songwriting. That's a great place to start, particularly if you struggle with lyrics, which I would always say was the bane of my life when it came to songwriting. And so there you've got like a ready-made hymn, haven't you? You've got ready-made lyrics. So that's a great kind of way to, breathe new life into old hymns. And then another of our roles is to use our band creatively. We've kind of touched on this anyway, but and I just mentioned about BVs, for example. I think so often there's not much direction. Often, I'm not saying always, or not always loads of direction given to BVs. It's kind of like, just harmonise, find a harmony and you just go for it. And the first time I ever sang BVs, I thought that was the case. I didn't have any direction, so I thought, okay, well, I'm here to sing. So I literally sang every single thing in like full harmony the whole time, even when the worship leader was trying to back off the mic. I was like, la, la, like full on, just... I thought that was what I was there to do. I didn't really understand the whole kind of read the room and also using my voice creatively. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but I thought we could just give it a go anyway. With harmonies in particular, again, like you patch this into, like if you don't... You're not a BV, you're not a worship leader, but you play an instrument. Again, it's just good to think of this and you can kind of copy and paste into your own way, whether you play keys or electric or whatever. So particularly with like a repeated tag, so something like, I praise the name, for example. I think we can use that rather, if we're repeating that section, the chorus, oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. If we're doing it like 3 or 4 times, with the same instrumentation, everyone doing exactly the same thing all 4 times, but just maybe a bit louder. That's one way to make it a bit different. But there are so many other ways we can do that as well, to create a bit of variation, to highlight the words in different ways. And so I thought we could give it a try. In terms of vocals, what we've done sometimes is we'll have everybody just singing unison for the first time round. And again, that just like, it really pinpoints the words that you're singing, doesn't it? There's no flowery stuff going on. It's like, praise the name of the Lord our God. And symbolically, as well as, I hope, prophetically, it unites everybody, doesn't it? It's like, let's praise his name forever. So we'll try doing that. And then gradually splitting off into the 2 other harmonies. You up for it? Okay, so we'll sing all in unison to start with. And then the guys, this could go horribly wrong. I was trying to work this out because I don't have a guys register, but I think if this is the melody, oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. if the guys can sing, oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Does that sound like in your register? But up, yeah? Oh, praise his name forevermore. Yeah? All right, so when it comes to guys, that's what you're doing. And then ladies, we'll sing the other one, okay? So, oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, pray. No. I knew this was going to go wrong. Which one did I just do? Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, that was the same thing. Sorry. Oh, praise. Oh, no, sorry, the guys one is, oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. So it's above the melody, yeah? Oh, all right, we got it? Okay, so we'll start by just singing unison. All right, and then the men are going to go, oh, praise the name. Oh, beautiful. Yes, just like that. And then the women will go, this literally feels like an 80s time warp, doesn't it? Oh, man, that wasn't the intention. And then we'll sing the one that's below the melody. You got it? Yeah? Okay, cool. Right, let's try. And let's just see the way that it kind of like, it builds up the song. I won't play it any louder, but we'll just literally use the layers of music to create interest and to make each time feel different. Otherwise, there's no point in repeating it if we're just playing it exactly the same, just because we heard it on the record. Do you know what I mean? Okay. Right. So everybody in unison. Here we go. 2, 3. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh, Lord our God. Now women keep going and the men go. And so, oh, praise. Here we go. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh, Lord our God. Okay, and then some of the women do the other one. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh, Lord our God. And then we'll just go quietly to unison again. Sing, oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh, Lord our God. See how each of those felt so different for different reasons. It sounded heavenly. That was amazing. But that's just one of the ways that we can use that. And I do that with instruments all the time. So sometimes it will be like, let's save the drums for the last time round. So it's almost like it's crying out for some rhythm, if you know what I mean. And just, yeah, it's just a way of bringing something creatively to the table. I could do that all day. That was lovely. Cool. And then just finally, the congregation's role. The congregation's role in worship, when they come through the doors on a Sunday and, you know, someone's prayed and it's time to begin song worship, it's their role to engage their hearts in worship. And this is beyond our control, for good and for bad sometimes, for better and for worse sometimes. You know, I've got 4 little kids, and I know even, you know, on some Sunday mornings, I've been fighting the urge to swear under my breath because this person's forgot this, we're late, we haven't been able to find a parking spot, which happens around here. You've probably experienced it. And we're late, so I've got to get the kids to kids' work, and if I don't, then I'm going to have all 4 of them around my feet for the rest of the morning. And so can you already sense the state of my mental health by the time I'm getting to worship? So that is beyond our control. How people arrive, we can't influence that. But what we can do, what does come under our name, if you like, is we can create space for people to enter his gates with thanksgiving, enter his courts with praise, and even using songs that are points of entry are exactly, I mean, they're there for a reason. That, you know, they were used in the Bible to unite everybody so that you don't have to be like, jumping up and down, ready to worship, bursting, in order to sing those truths and sing those songs with integrity. Anyone, however they're feeling, can sing those songs. And so even something like "Oh, Praise the Name," it tells a story, doesn't it? So it's not straight in there with like, "My heart burns for you," or something like that, or like, "There's no place I'd rather be than here in your love. Get off, get off," you know. It's not like that. That's my pet cat, by the way. No, not really. So do you know what I mean? It's stuff that we can all unite over. Again, that's pastorally the bit that we can be responsible for, is creating, giving people words to sing that they can sing with integrity at that point in the journey of worship, which is right at the start. And then secondly, it's the congregation's role to respond. Again, this kind of crosses over a little bit with not hyping the Spirit up, but more than that, it's for this reason that, you know, we don't typically say, you know, while we're leading worship, raise your hands, bow your knees, sing louder. Not because that, you know, can sound a bit jarring, but the heart of it is because I don't want to tell anybody how to respond. I don't want to tell anybody how to express their worship. I mean, we're already giving them the words to sing, aren't we? We've already chosen the songs for them. So I guess the least we can do is help them feel released to express that however they want. I can think of nothing more beautiful than the church expressing that in a variety of ways. You know, you can be singing the same song. Someone's there jumping up and down like this, another person's just there, someone's weeping, someone's kneeling, someone's just sitting quietly in their seat, just letting the words wash over them, not even singing. And so for that reason, it is, that's why I put it there, it's the congregation's role to respond. It's not our role to force them into a box and say, here's what your worship should really look like. But in order to give people that permission, it's so important to model it. Have you heard the phrase, worship is caught, not taught? And I can think of so many examples of things where people just haven't seen something modeled, so they've made an assumption that is totally not true. So I can think of nothing more beautiful than, you know, when we're singing a song of worship, than just seeing, you know, our electric guitarist kind of like bent over his guitar, just meeting with God in his own way. Or perhaps a backing vocalist stepped away from the mic, just worshipping like that, you know, because he or she is lost in wonder, and that's the way that they're expressing their worship. Sorry, we started late, but we're finishing on time. I've just been reminded. So yeah, I'd love to get that across, really, just that it's their job to respond how they want. And to model that, sometimes it is a case of, being intentional about expressing your worship in different ways. Sometimes I said, a backing vocalist said to me once, I said, can you sing, you know, can you come with, make sure you sing verse 1 with me, you know, it's the start of the service, let's like go in strong and things. She was like, I thought we weren't allowed to sing in verse 1. I said, who told you that? And she said, I thought we never sang for verse 1. We only came in with harmonies on verse 2 or something like that. And I just thought that's how powerful modeling things is, isn't it? So hopefully the picture that we all leave here with is the congregation, us as worship leaders and musicians and tech people, anyone involved in the leading of worship, and God's presence. We want a flow where we are helping people meet with Jesus. But the perfect scenario is when our job becomes redundant and the congregation are just so in the presence of God that they are following God, that there's no need for a mediator, if you like. And things that come to mind when I think of that are singing Amazing Grace at the end of Soul Survivor festivals, if you've ever been. By that point in the week, everyone was so there and had so met with God over the 5 days that really was redundant as a worship. Like we'd been done out of a job. And so that's how we ended. We just started off, got everybody, started off singing Amazing Grace. And then one by one, everyone just took their instruments off and walked off stage. And it was just literally the words just guiding people there as a guide. And everyone was they were leading themselves in worship, and that's what we want, isn't it? We're not here because, God's called me to be a worship leader. This is my position, my role in the church. This is what I bring, and this is how I play a part. But it's like we're just there because people need unifying and bringing, so there's not complete chaos. But the best of both worlds is when we're not needed anymore, and when God is so doing His thing. So I hope that has been practical / helpful / fun to sing together. And hopefully that helps you in your teams back home. It's so lovely to have you all here, and enjoy your lunch.